Good morning. Welcome to Coffee with KPP Live here on Tuesday, November 3rd, Election Day. The day that we've all been waiting for, where the madness hopefully ends. Right?
Morning, folks. Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of people are just ready for it to be over.
You know, there's that election fatigue. We've all seen the ads, and it's been a long time coming, especially with COVID piled on. So I don't know about you. I was happy to vote this morning, and just to get it past us, it's just a breath of fresh air, isn't it?
I think we both voted this morning, and I know that we also got, I think I'm really will be happy when I don't get about 14 different advertisements and cards in the mail for every party. And I feel like when I throw all that away, I think, God, how many millions of trees are we killing? You know, Kyle, One of the things that I was thinking about, I know we both voted this morning. I think we're both old school.
Yeah.
And I actually like going in and going through the process of, voting in person on that day.
Yep. I agree.
The one thing that I found is that they seem like they've got to be where it's very efficient. I literally went in, and I think I was out in 15 minutes. I think we both agreed the only reason why we weren't out earlier was that we had a couple decisions that had to be made on the back.
That's right.
That was several, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs long.
Yeah.
I think that dovetails right into the fact that I think we both recognize the fact that there must have been, at the polling center I was at, I think there was probably 35 to 50 volunteers, people that were giving up their time for free
in lieu of COVID.
To make sure that the process went smoothly. And to me, it was the most effective I've ever seen it. Of course, there's always the police officers there that we like to thank that make sure everything's orderly.
Yep.
So we'd like to thank them too. But, the poll workers that were there that sacrificed their time, and because of the COVID, I think they deserve an extra thanks. So for those of you that helped participate in that process, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Kyle and I both.
Absolutely, thank you. And not only that, but just with the uncertainty of it all. If we watched the news, we would think that the elections were going to be an absolute mess. So again, to echo that thanks from everybody here at KPP, thank you to all the volunteers, all the pollsters, because it just felt you were able to confidently place your vote.
Right.
You knew that the process was really working. So cheers to that. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow up today and have another conversation about the markets and the election. What does it mean for your money? There's a lot of fear and anxiety out there, obviously, and we're here to, based on follow-up from last week, we had really great feedback, really good comments, and we just really want to deliver more positive, encouraging information for everybody that watches. So thank you to all the people that do tune in throughout the week. And we just want to make sure that you understand that you have a place to go. If you have questions, concerns, if you're afraid about your finances, your financial future, whether it's for the short term or the long term, that's really why we're doing these videos, because in a COVID-19 environment, we want to make sure that you all out there know that we exist where we are, that we're here to help you, and we're taking on new clientele to make sure that we can help them get on track.
I think that brings up a great point, because this is about the election, but I think we've all noticed that one of the biggest, they're making what's one of the biggest concern is about COVID. So the COVID and election, they kind of go hand in hand. And, a lot of people will ask, who's going to win?
That's right.
So, who's going to win? Not the election. What companies are going to win? What would you do? What's the concern about certain industries? And so, Kyle, what as it concerns specific industries, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and that's what always comes up, right? Because as financial advisors, we have to make sure we take emotion out of the equation for our clients and ourselves to make sure we can make really good, solid decisions. So what we're going to talk about today is what markets will probably win, or what types of companies would win, regardless of who wins or regardless of what the future looks like. So we're going to break down a couple sectors, a couple industries today. We're going to try to not get in the weeds too much, but talk logically about these things, because quite frankly, markets don't really care about elections. Markets care about corporate profitability, right? And it's not just an election right now. Like we talked about last year, or last week rather, how an election is important, but generally you're not going to see revolutionary changes in policy and governing. You're going to see evolutionary changes. So the politics really don't have as much as an impact as global events. So to your question, let's look at the world. Right now, we know that this week, England and several other countries in Europe have announced shutdowns.
Right.
So what does that mean? What we'll most likely see is travel, airline industry is going to continue to struggle. Tourism, hotel chains. We're going to potentially see a drop if we haven't already. We obviously have already. Tourism industry has struggled. Restaurant industry. Oil, gas prices.
Absolutely.
If we don't have shipping containers going back and forth from Asia to America, Europe to America, you're going to have just those shipping containers, those freighters alone use tremendous amount of oil. So demand for oil and fuel, whether it's the airlines, shipping, you name it, just general travel, if people aren't traveling, they're not burning up fuel in their cars.
Airports are pretty empty. I just recently traveled, and when you walk through the airport, they seem like they're at about 25% capacity.
Wow.
And so that is a lot of jets and tens of thousands of gallons of jet fuel that aren't being used. And at the end of the day, that affects the industry. You know, another one it's kind of funny because it seems like it could go both ways as far as good for part of that industry and bad for the other part is the healthcare industry.
Yeah, you had some great points about that. So talk about that. Where could it be bad? Because you would think COVID-19, because a lot of clients are asking this, should we be overweight healthcare right now? So talk about why we really want to be careful there.
You know, a lot of people are putting off things like elective surgery or, you know, I've got to go every 6 months and get checked by my dermatologist because I get a sunspot. Or, you know, they'll put off their dental cleaning for 3 or 4 months because they don't want to be around COVID. Any elective type surgeries, if you need a hip replacement or knee replacement, I think a lot of those procedures are on hold. And that affects a lot of people that work in those industries and they can't work.
That's right.
Whereas some of the emergency room doctors and people that are the COVID nurses and things where it's more critical care, I think they're working overtime. And thank you to those folks too, because Absolutely. Of course they have a crucial role in making. So I think that's the biggest difference in the healthcare. That some sectors of the healthcare, subsectors, might do really, really well, where others might not do well.
That's right. And you know, we have clients that are doctors, nurses in the medical field, and we've had many say that entire floors of hospitals are empty. For that reason exactly. Right. People aren't getting their knees replaced, hip replacement, things like that. And what's even scarier too is many Americans aren't going into the hospital when they probably should or they otherwise would. You know, if you feel like you're having a heart attack, if you feel like you need to seek medical attention, please don't let COVID-19 stop you from doing that, because quite frankly, there are people there ready to serve you, and the processes that these medical professionals have in place to keep you safe and get you the medical attention you need, they're just working. It's amazing. They're all heroes, to your point.
And one other sector of healthcare that seems to me is, I know personally, and I think everybody does, it's the mental aspect of it. And I think that they've said that mental health inquiries are up over 600%. Because so many people are stressed about their jobs. Maybe they've lost a job. Maybe they've got to stay home. One of the spouses have to stay home because they've got 2 to 5 kids that need to be homeschooled, and a parent has to stay home. So there's so many stressors that have been added, into their lives because of the COVID.
That's right.
That's even, I'd say, even more than the election, which is almost hard to say.
Agree. And that's the thing, the stressor of the election too. I mean, we look at the social unrest in our country. There's just so many things to be fearful for. But what we're here to tell you, as far as your money is concerned, is all the more reason to take a step back. A non-emotional, rational view at the market is really, really important to have. And that's really what we aim to do here at Kentucky Planning Partners, is to make sure that we are taking that step back and looking at all this from the outside in.
Right.
And fortunately, we've got a great team. We have great advisors and associates, great resources, great partners that we lean on. And one of our partners here, it's actually a good entree into this, is to get back into the election. We talked about, does the market really care about who's in office? And short term there's going to be some movement, but long term it really doesn't. So one of our partners here at Lord Abbott have come up with this great piece, and it's really hard probably to see in the format, but what this shows is, in this line here, this shows the date of the election. On average, the markets, regardless if you have a divided government, the Democrats or Republicans in power, going back to every election cycle to 1948, and again, disclosure, past performance is no indication of future results. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes, right?
Right.
So going into most election cycles, the markets on average here are actually down, or they significantly underperform. Whereas regardless of who comes into office, regardless of who's in power, even in a divided government, historically we've seen the markets run for the 6 to 12 months after an election. Now, there's a lot of speculation involved in that, but I think more than anything, it's important to remember that the markets are driven by corporate profits. And
right.
the environment in which those corporations are going to be working is going to be based on a predictable, the predictability of the economic environment, the tax environment, and things like that really parlay into historical market growth the year after an election.
Well, many times I think what you will see in the short duration after the election, depending on the circumstances, not the party, there'll be irrational jubilation or there'll be irrational fear. There'll be buying when you probably shouldn't, or selling when you probably shouldn't.
That's right.
So, it's a tightrope to walk. And I think again, once, here at Kentucky Planning Partners, we profess about making sure you have an asset allocation that you can live with, that you're not being too risky or too greedy, and you're not being too afraid and sitting in 100% cash, because both of those can be equally bad. Mm-hmm. So it's important to make sure that you have a well thought out plan.
That's right.
As we profess, make sure you have those emergency funds. Depending on your age and situation, normally say at least 3 months, if not 6 months, if not a year, and in certain cases, depending on the circumstances, even up to 2 years, setting in something that's absolutely boring, like cash or CDs or a money market fund.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially the closer you get to retirement. So a lot of people have asked us, many clients have really voiced their concern because, when we look at right now, we've come into every election year, we always hear people say that this is the election that's going to determine the course of our country, right? Every single election is the most consequential election, right? But let's face it, this year, I hate to say this time it's different, but this year we do have a global pandemic, right?
Yes.
We do have an election. We do have volatility overseas and geopolitical risk, and there's a lot involved. So what we've done is really looked at our clients that are closer to retirement. And if you have IRA assets and you're within several months or year or very close to retirement, and this market and this volatility is literally keeping you up at night, and you can't sleep, and it is having physical impact, then, taking a step back or maybe dialing down, gearing down the level of risk in your portfolio might be a prudent thing to do. But to Ken's point, generally we're emotional beings and we're going to sell at the wrong times and buy at the wrong times. I always liken it to driving in traffic, right? We have this beautiful road down here. Let's all face it. We've driven in traffic.
Pick the wrong lane.
That's exactly right. If you're in that middle lane and it's stopped, the lane to your left is moving along, what do we all do?
Right.
We move over.
And then it immediately stops.
And then the lane we were in starts going, right? And we'll oftentimes pick that wrong lane. There's a great movie years ago called Office Space is what it was. And the opening scene, there was a guy sitting in traffic and there was an old gentleman with a walker that was beating the traffic. And it always makes me laugh. So to the point of investing, how that relates to investing is, yeah, it's okay if you really have that fear, to make prudent moves at times makes sense, but just get some advice. Give us a call if you have questions. And some people just need to have their hand held. Other people might have a level of risk that they don't understand in their portfolio, and dialing it back, getting their portfolio aligned with their risk tolerance is something that everybody should do.
And if you don't need to drive 90 miles an hour to get to the destination and risk a ticket or worse, an accident, then maybe you should just drive 65 and get there safely.
Absolutely.
What I mean by that is don't be too overly aggressive in your portfolio if you don't have to be. Now, at the end of the day, we all have people, there's exceptions to every rule, but typically speaking, that's what we profess. Stay the course.
That's right.
You might pump the brakes a little bit, but basically stay the course.
Stay the course. And the markets don't care about the election. Stay the course. Everything's going to be okay. The sun's going to come up tomorrow. We might not know who's president tomorrow, but the sun will come up, right? So stay the course.
I'm going to switch back to the Spanish flu, too, because I'm going to jump back into that. into the COVID. Because if you really look at the last pandemic that we had that was even similar to this, everyone, I would suggest, if you actually read about it, would say much, much, much worse, was the Spanish flu.
That's right.
And if
1918.
You look at 1918. And if you look at most pandemics, because I guess when you're bored and you're sitting at home, you say, I'm going to study up on what a pandemic is, which I think we probably all have to a lesser degree. One or another, a certain amount, we've all probably looked at that. One of the things that I've noticed is it tends to, historically, you have a big spike like we had in March, and you have a lot of people that are hospitalized, and then you have that dip as we had, and then you have that second spike. And what historically tends to happen is when you have that second spike and it drops, it tends to really kind of go away. And so the reason why I'm bringing that up, I think it'd be funny for a lot of folks that are, because you have a lot of people on this side or that side that say it's going to go away after the election no matter what. And the thing about it, it might, medically speaking, actually go away because we're having our second spike.
That's right. And a lot of people ask too, well, if we have a second spike, won't that mean we'll see another 30+% decline in the market like we saw in March? Again, past performance, no indication. But let's think about the difference in what would happen. In that, in March, let's face it, nobody saw COVID coming. It came on almost in the dead of night and affected us very, very quickly. That's why we saw a 35% decline in March. Now, we had 6, 7 months, 8 months to prepare now. And if we look at the response that we have, there's a saying in the industry, don't fight the Fed, right?
Right.
Right now, regardless of who's elected president, the American response is it's better to do more than it is to do less, right? So right now we have the medical field much better prepared for a second spike. We have built in, whether it's we're all wearing face masks. Companies have adapted to this stay-at-home work environment.
Sure.
We're going to have business leaders over the next several weeks and months come on and tell us how they've adapted. We've seen companies actually are more profitable sometimes with employees staying at home. Employees sometimes are more productive than they were in the office.
Therapeutics, not cures, but things where, okay, I can get over this by staying at home and taking the different medicines that they now have that'll lessen the severity of it.
That's right. So in fact, we see that and say, granted, is it bad for a global shutdown? Absolutely. But what we've seen so far is that in lieu of the technological advancement that we have in modern society, the economies are still able to roil on. And the other thing I was noticing, I want everybody watching to notice, when you're coming into the office, every McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, every Starbucks, there's a line around the corner, sometimes down the block. People are still getting coffee. They're still getting their McGriddles. They're still spending money. So as much as things have changed, I think there's an idea that even if we do see a second wave and we want everybody to stay safe, everybody to stay healthy, it doesn't necessarily mean the markets are going to correct as dramatically as they did in March. Will we see a lag? Yeah, there is going to be some fear. There is going to be a drag on the economy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see a collapse.
Well, and I think that regardless of who wins this election, that they're going to find a way to get this next wave of stimulus, because when they provide this stimulus, it gives people the confidence to stay the course. I would suggest, even if they're working from home, but whenever we can help people as a society, it makes the rest of society feel better and go about their lives, right?
Absolutely.
So we think that regardless of which party wins this election, there's going to be another wave of stimulus. It's going to help at least keep things, even.
That's right. Floating. That's
Right.
exactly right. Yeah, and the stimulus, the point on the stimulus is really important because we have seen a tremendous amount of volatility lately. Markets might be up 1.5% one day, down 1.5% the next. Today, as of 10:20 right now, the futures were opening significant. I think we're up about 1.5% on the general indices. And really stimulus is the key to that, which, quite frankly, it does show some fragility in the market, things that we need to be cognizant of, and that if we don't get stimulus, we want to be cognizant of that. But again, it goes back to the old line, don't fight the Fed. Don't fight the Fed. I'd hate to be the politician that doesn't approve the stimulus, right? Politicians need votes to keep their jobs, and that's one of the beautiful things about the American democracy.
I'd like to bring something up, Kyle. I'm going to dovetail into another subject. So earlier we were talking about all of the political ads that maybe get door hangers in your mailbox. It seems like they have a lot of different ways they can deliver them. I think I've had 2 or 3 times they've been on my windshield. I've been in a restaurant and I've come out and there's one on my windshield. So, what about as far as, I get a lot of ads, myself, from people wanting me to attend classes. Mm-hmm. To like, hey, come and listen to what we do. We're financial planners, or we're stockbrokers, or we're this insurance agent, and they want you to come to, I don't know, Roost Chris, or any, a lot of upscale restaurants that I tend to get invited to for a free steak dinner.
Yeah. So you're getting invited by other financial advisors to go attend.
And I've almost just went so I could see what they have to say, but I hear what they say. But I've almost went to see, I'd like to get a free steak too. And believe me, that free steak is not free.
Well, and that's the thing about it. So it's funny you're talking about, unfortunately, I don't think those flyers are going to stop after the election, Ken. So there are always going to be people out there that are going to be trying to get you to see them, right? And let's be honest, that's part of the reasons why we're doing this. We're getting this information out there so that you all are aware of who we are at KPP, what we do. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because what we feel as a firm is we want to be able to deliver as much information to you as freely as we possibly can. We want to make sure that our doors are open to you. If you have questions, concerns, a brother, a sister, an uncle, a mother that has questions that you feel like you need answered and you don't want to be pressured. Let's face it, if you're going to get a steak dinner on somebody that you don't know, they're going to expect something in return, right? Nothing comes for free here.
There's a lot of, I always say, if you think about it, it's not only the dinner, it's the listing for all those people that are over 50 and between 50 and 65, and you got to purchase the list, and then they got to scrub the list, and so you got to have to buy the list, and then you got to pay for the printing and the mailing and then the dinner. So a lot of times I would suggest that those folks tend to, when you see them, and there's exceptions to every rule, but oftentimes I'll suggest that there is something that's built into that recommendation that you're going to get ultimately if you go see them, that will, I got to pay for all those steak dinners and prepare for the next one. So there might be a high commission product built into that, and they're commission-based products that aren't bad.
That's right.
But a lot of times it's the portion. It differentiates a poison from a cure, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you have the right amount of certain medicines, it'll save your life. If you have too much of the same medicine, it might end your life. So I hope that wasn't a bad analogy during these times, but it's one that applies.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And contrast that to what we're doing here at KPP. We're doing these classes or this conversation every Tuesday at 10 a.m. We hope that you enjoy them. The feedback's been great so far. So thank you to everybody for the feedback, and continue to watch. Share this with your friends, family members, loved ones, because what we want to do is provide valuable and timely and positive and encouraging information to you, your friends, to the public, without any obligation. If you are in a situation where you feel like you need help, you need questions answered, like I said, we want to be available to you. We are available to you. We are growing our clientele. We're taking on new clients, and we want to make sure that you know that you can give us a call without any fear that you're going to be sold something because because we got you a steak or anything like that. So, and with that said, part of the educational series we have is check out our website. We're coming out with content all the time. Continue to follow us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn, and this Thursday, 2 days from now on the 5th, will be our first class, our Social Security class. The first Thursday of every month, I'll be doing a live and interactive Social Security class for anybody that wants to join. There's no limit on attendance, so Social Security is something that by the time it's of interest to you, you can't believe it's of interest to you because, the time flies so fast. So with that said, stay tuned, and I think we're about time to wrap it up, but is there anything else? Any final closing thoughts?
Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you all. So remember, get out and vote if you haven't already. And I think we can all agree, I'm sure there are going to be people all over that you have friends, family members, loved ones that are going to be thinking differently than you, voting differently than you, but it doesn't mean that they care any less about you. And I believe that even if we're voting in a different way, together our country will be moving forward collectively. For the most part, we all want the same things. And, last week Rob said it best. He said, we're divided by red and blue. I just hope that going forward there can be a lot more purple. And I think there's a lot more purple than we all think. So.
And to all you poll workers out there, again, thank you very much for your hard work and efforts.
Thank you. God bless.
See you next week, folks.